I lived through hyperinflation and the terrorist insurgency of Sendero Luminoso in Peru, made frequent visits to Bolivia as it tried to reform its economy, and to Colombia as it was opening up its political system, even as it suffered the murderous assaults of drug traffickers, guerrillas, and paramilitaries. In 1990, I moved to Mexico City, becoming the Economist correspondent. I spent the next 3.5 years observing Carlos Salinas' ultimately flawed effort to modernize Mexico and its authoritarian political system, the winding down of the wars in Central America, the impact of the collapse of the Soviet Union on Cuba, and of low oil prices on Venezuela. After an interlude in London, the 3 years covering Brazil and the Southern Cone offered inter alia an insight into the complexities of economic reform in democracy, the deceptive glitter of Menem's Argentina, the potential as yet unfulfilled of the Mercosur trade bloc, and Chile's attempts to throw off the shadow of Pinochet. During all these years, I enjoyed the journalist's enormous privilege of being able to watch history unfold at close quarters and to ask questions of many of its protagonists. I benefited from the time, opinions, and wisdom of many hundreds of Latin Americans, from presidents to peasant farmers, as well as of professional observers of the region. And having married a Peruvian and acquired a Peruvian daughter, I was constantly exposed at home and through friends to Latin American perspectives on life. I wanted to try to make sense of what I had learned in a more systematic way. What follows draws upon those conversations and upon my reporting, especially for The Economist over the past 17 years, and occasionally on that of colleagues at the magazine. But this book is not a collection of articles. Indeed, it is not a typical journalist's book. In trying to explain why things are as they are in Latin America, I have occasionally trespassed on academic territory. Like all trespassers, I have done so in a spirit of defiance of prohibition and in expectation of a clip round the ear from the proprietors of the territory infringed. Conversely, I hope that my step has been sufficiently light not to arouse boredom in other readers. It was my original intention that the book's narrative would begin around 1980, but it quickly became apparent to me that I would have to start much further back. That decision was in the spirit of the conversations I had each time I ventured into a country new to me in Latin America. A seemingly simple question about some aspect of contemporary politics would lead within a few minutes to an exposition of the peculiarities of that country's 19th century history. I soon came to know that this was the signal for a fascinating discussion, often lasting several hours. Since history and historical figures are being daily invoked by Latin American politicians, I make no apology for having decided to start the story around 1810, when most Latin American countries began their struggle for independence. The 3 historical chapters are preceded by 2 introductory chapters, which set out what is at stake in the region and discuss prevailing explanations for its relative difficulty in establishing prosperous democracies. The later chapters start with an assessment of the record of economic reform in the region since 1982. The next 2 chapters look in detail at what has emerged as the central argument in today's Latin America, between what I have called populist autocracy, as personified by Hugo Chavez and others, and democratic reformism, exemplified here in contrasting ways by Chile, Brazil, and Mexico. It is my contention that at issue in this debate are differing views of the region's history, as well as sharply different political and economic choices, and in that sense it is a battle for Latin America's soul. Further chapters